moon's first friends. One giant leap for friendship. It's pretty clever. I like that. The moon was queen of the night sky. She was so bright that everything she touched glowed with silver light. But after many, many years had passed, she was lonely. If only someone would come visit me, she said. Oh, poor moon. She looks so lonely. She just wants a friend. Let's see if she makes some. Hello down there, she called to the lumbering dinosaurs. If you come up here, you won't feel so heavy. You'll feel lighter than air. But the dinosaurs stayed where they were. Well, at least she has some company. Under the moon's watchful eye, the surface of the earth changed. The moon saw glorious new creatures come and go. Saber-toothed tigers, mastodons, woolly mammoths, dodo birds, whales, rhinoceroses, and elephants. But they all stayed earthbound and rarely looked up to her in the night sky. She's watching them all. The moon has seen so much. But then she saw something new. At night, people conjured fires up like tiny stars. There are millions of stars for you up here, she offered, but the people stayed where they were. The moon watched as she circled and circled the earth. On the wide sweep of the hot Sahara, the Egyptians built stone pyramids that towered toward the sky. They're trying to reach me, the moon marveled. But though the pyramids were mighty, they came nowhere near high enough to reach the moon. Perhaps they didn't see her. Oh, she's watching them build their fire over here. She's watching the pyramids being built. The moon's so curious. She just wants someone to join her. She spun and twirled from new moon to majestic silver pearl and back again, showing off for the people below. But no one came. Oh, I really love this page with all the moon, like the lunar cycle on it. The phases of the moon. She watched as down on Earth people came up with all kinds of ways to get from one place to another, but they did not sail or drive or cycle or float to the moon. Then, on a windy day in North Carolina, the first airplane flew above a beach. You're doing great, encouraged the moon. You just need to fly a little higher. But the people on Earth only traveled to visit one another. Was it possible they didn't even know she was there? Look at all the ways people are traveling. And the moon is still like, come visit me. At high noon, the moon slipped purposefully between the earth and the sky, blocking all the daylight. Then she slid aside again, allowing the sun to shine through. No one could have missed that, she thought. But still, no one ventured away from Earth. Would she ever have a visitor? She has her sunglasses on because she's looking right at the sun. Those would be some big sunglasses. Just when the moon was losing hope, the people on Earth began to experiment with rockets, and the moon watched with great interest, but the humans still had a lot to learn. One day, the moon's hopes soared. A chimpanzee in a Mercury capsule rocketed toward her. A visitor, at last! But alas, he returned to Earth without reaching her. Looks like we're getting closer to the moon getting a visitor. At least she had someone trying. He came all the way out there, but then went back to Earth. Then, one hot July day, a tremendous rocket stood upon a launch pad with two small spaceships perched on top. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff! At 30 stories high and weighing 6 million pounds, the rocket rose into the air amid an explosion of flames. Slowly at first, and then faster and faster. The rocket fell away in stages, but the two spaceships hurtled towards the moon. They're coming, the moon said. They're actually coming. So these are the parts that fell off. And then this is the part that's going to make it to the moon, hopefully. She's really excited for a visitor. She's been waiting for so long. One of the spaceships remained at a distance, circling, but the other came closer, closer, until at last its spindle legs touched down. "Welcome," she greeted the men who emerged from the spaceship. Look, they landed on her. Look at her looking at the guys over here. She's looking. And then here's the spaceship that just kept orbiting around. Orbiting means circling around. The astronauts walked across her surface with great bounding steps that made her dust bloom. They seemed delighted with how far they could travel within each stride. The moon gave them gifts of moon rocks and dust. "Take these back to Earth," she said. "Then, even though I can't visit you, a part of me will be there." The men left her a present in return, a handsome plaque that read, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969, AD. We came in peace for all mankind." They also left her a beautiful flag with red and white stripes and a scattering of white stars on a blue background. So there's the plaque that we left, that they left, the astronauts left. And then there's the flag they left, the American flag. Too soon the astronauts had to leave. "Goodbye," said the moon as their ship floated away into the starry distance. "Come back any time." She sighed with happiness. At last, someone had visited. She probably feels so nice. She looks happy, but also kind of sad that they're leaving. Happy that they visited, but sad to see them go. And now she had hope that it would happen again and again. Maybe one day you will visit her. I don't know if I should read this part. What do you think? It's like facts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh God. This is less fun than what I was reading. Okay.
It's almost perfect.
Mission Moon. NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was established July 29th, 1958, and became operational October 1st, 1958. NASA is part of the U.S. government and is in charge of science and technology related to airplanes and space. NASA makes satellites, sends probes into space, studies the solar system, explores planets and asteroids, and many other things. You probably know NASA best for its space program, which sends spacecrafts and people into space. Since its beginning, NASA has had many spaceflight programs, including Project Mercury, Project Apollo, and the International Space Station, and more. Here's some out-of-this-world facts. It takes about 1 month, 29 and a half days, for the moon to get all the way around the Earth. The moon does not give off light the way the sun does. What we see as moonlight is actually the reflected light of the sun. Oh, that's interesting. Earth's moon is the 5th largest one in our solar system. That means that other planets have moons too. The moon is much smaller than the Earth, about 1/4 of the Earth's size. The moon is only 2,159 miles across from one side to the other, and with a circumference of 6,783.5 miles. Earth's diameter is 7,926 miles. The moon has no air, no weather, and no life, although water was discovered on the moon in 2009. And these are the phases of the moon down here. So this one here is the new moon. This one's the waxing crescent. This one's the first quarter moon. This is the waxing gibbous moon. This is the full moon. Everybody knows the full moon. That's an easy one. This one's the waning gibbous moon. That's the last quarter moon. And then that's the waning crescent moon. So when you see moons that are, in the crescent shape, it can either be waxing or waning. And then the same thing with the gibbous. It's either waxing or waning. So that's pretty interesting. The Apollo 11 voyage. On May 25th, 1961, President John F. Kennedy went to Congress with a very special goal. American astronauts were going to visit the moon in less than 10 years. Although many people thought it couldn't be done, Congress liked the idea so much that they approved a budget of more than $25 billion. That's a lot of money. NASA launched the Apollo 11 program with the goal of landing Americans on the moon, taking samples, photos, and data, and then returning home safely. The program was challenging, and NASA estimated that it took over 400,000 engineers, scientists, and technicians to make the moon landing possible. Finally, on July 16, 1969, after more than 8 years of training, planning, and preparation, NASA launched the Saturn V Rocket from Cape Kennedy. Piloted by astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, Saturn V flew through space for more than 3 days. On July 20th, 1969, more than 530 million people listened as Neil Armstrong became the first man to set foot on the moon, saying, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Almost 22 hours on the moon's surface. After almost 22 hours on the moon's surface, Apollo 11 safely returned to Earth. So that's actually a photo of when they landed on the moon, when the astronauts landed on the moon. The spacesuit. Space is a beautiful place if you want to go there. But if you want to go there, you'll need the right clothes. In space, it's very, very cold. There isn't any sound and there's no air. NASA designed special suits to keep their astronauts safe on their way to visit the moon. For the Apollo 11 mission, each suit was specifically made for the astronaut. Each astronaut had 3 different suits. At $2 million each, that's quite an expensive wardrobe. An astronaut suit has oxygen tanks to let them breathe, radios to communicate with each other, and even to Earth, and protective gear to keep them safe while they travel through space. So there's a picture of the spacesuit they have. It's pretty interesting. They have special boots and they have the helmet. The rocket. Have you ever blown a balloon and then let the air out? What happens? The air shoots out of the opening and the balloon shoots out in the other direction. Well, rockets work pretty much in the same way. When a rocket is launched, its engines fire and the exhaust gases blow out at a high speed, pushing the rocket up and away. The Saturn V rocket was built for the Apollo 11 mission, but in order to visit the moon, the rocket had to first break free of Earth's gravity. The Earth's gravity is strong and likes to keep things on the ground. There's a picture of the spacesuit over here that you can check out. And thank goodness gravity is so strong, or else you wouldn't be able to walk without floating off into the air. To escape Earth's gravity, a rocket needs engines strong enough to go almost 18,000 miles per hour. Going that fast requires a lot of fuel. So the Saturn V rocket was built with 3 stages that held the fuel. In total, the rocket was made of 5 main pieces: 3 fuel stages, the instrument unit, and the command service module, and the lunar module. The first stage is the big one on the ground. It uses almost 5 million pounds of fuel to get the rocket off of the Earth and into the air, moving almost 7,500 feet per second. Have you ever watched a rocket launch on television? If so, this is probably what you saw. Second stage. Once Saturn V reached the upper atmosphere surrounding Earth, the booster engines and fuel tanks of the second stage broke off. But don't worry, this was all according to plan. Once all the fuel had been used to get off the ground, the astronauts didn't want to carry around all that extra weight, so they detached the parts they didn't need. This let them move even faster, while they started the second stage of their launch. The rockets for stage 2 were smaller, but they still used almost 1 million pounds of fuel and got the astronauts almost halfway to the moon. The third stage. The third stage was a much smaller set of rockets, used by astronauts to get them into the moon's orbit. After the boosters from the second stage broke off, just like in the first, the entire rocket was so much smaller than when it started. This smaller craft required much less fuel to move through space and let the astronauts pilot it very carefully into the moon's orbit. Once the astronauts were situated where they needed to be, the third stage broke off too. Now, with all 3 stages used up and detached, the only pieces that remained were the instrument unit and the command service module, and the lunar module. The instrument unit and command service module. The instrument unit of Saturn V was the rocket's brain. Using powerful computers, the instrument unit could do all the calculations required to get the astronauts safely to the moon, and even autocorrect any problems that came up. This kept the astronauts safe and sound until they reached the moon's orbit, where the pilots took over using the command service module. This module would be used to take the astronauts home, but stayed in the moon's orbit while the lunar module went to the moon's surface. Lunar module. Now that they had gone all the way from Earth to the moon, all that the astronauts needed to do was land on the moon's surface and say hello. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin detached from the command service module and flew down to the moon's surface in the lunar module, officially becoming the moon's first friends. The tiny spaceship could only hold 2 astronauts, but had everything they needed to get onto the moon. Take their samples, take their photos and their videos, and then get back to the command service module. Now for the long trip home. After the astronauts completed their mission on the moon, it was time to say goodbye. But getting home was a mission in itself. They climbed back into their lunar module, and they used its tiny rockets to lift free of the moon's surface. Once back in orbit, they reconnected with the command service module, which they had left behind with their fellow astronaut Michael Collins, who's, the forgotten soldier in all of this. After traveling back through space for more than 4 days, they finally re-entered Earth's atmosphere and splashed down safely into the ocean. All their friends from NASA were eagerly waiting to hear about the moon. And there's a picture of the rocket, and it kind of breaks down each stage. This is the first stage over here, and then the second, the third, and then the upper 2 aircrafts that actually, the one that orbited the moon and the one that landed on the moon. So it's pretty interesting. And that's the end of our book. And that was the moon's first friends.